We're currently speeding across the western deserts of Central Asia in search of an abandoned shipping fleet. Join me as we discover what caused the fourth largest lake in the world to dry up and leave a large fleet of ships high and dry trapped in the middle of the desert. Let's get stuck in. Our first stop through the desert is in a place called Chilpik, which has a fascinating history dating back about 2,000 years. Originally, it was built by the Zoroastrian religion, where they would bring their dead and leave them out for the vultures to come and pick the bones, and as a sort of a purifying ceremony. I mean, I wouldn't like that as my sort of form of being buried, but that's what they used to do back in the day. And over the centuries, this place has transformed again and again and again. And of course, the military always gets involved in these things. And finally, it was conquered by the Mongols as they swept across Central Asia and westbound into Turkey and so forth. But it is a fascinating site right on top of a hill. So it did serve as a fortress for many years as well. And the surrounding plains look like that. What's fascinating about this place is that not far from here there is a river. And the river is what supplies most of the water for the cotton growing and wheat growing that goes on in Uzbekistan here. But if you step back just maybe 10, 20, 30 kilometers, you get into the deserts of Western Central Asia and you get this sort of thing. And the contrast between the green belt and the deserts of Central Asia are so much easier to see when you're at the top of this thing. Now, I've got to try and climb up here somehow without falling over. It's a little bit dodgy. Now, it is a mud construction. So someone 2,000 years ago got up here and packed down mud in the middle of the desert. Now, how they did that, I don't know. I guess that's one of the things that archaeologists have probably got a lifetime of work to try and figure out. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. What's interesting up here is that you can see the remnants of some old tile work. You can see the old foundations of buildings in square patterns up here. Now, it would have been some place to live, and that's exactly what would have happened in the years after this became one of those burial sites. It would have been a fortress where militaries lived for many centuries, and there would have been raids. And you can just imagine, as I get over this little ridge here, the scene as the Mongol hordes came storming along the steppe, the vast flatlands here in Central Asia. Beautiful. It's a lovely morning as well, isn't it? In this area of the world, it very rarely rains. They get 1 or 2 heavy rains per year. There is other types of rain, but only 1 or 2 downpours per year. So it's very difficult to live anywhere out on the steppe. There are villages that are old trading posts from the Silk Road, but generally they're connected by irrigation in some way. What a wonderful place to get a taste of that ancient Central Asian Silk Road history mixed in with a bit of a Mongol raiding party. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The landscape out here in the desert of Western Uzbekistan is a little bit similar to what it might be in Australia, with low shrubs. No trees, just shrubs, sandy, rocky soil, and not really any life out there. Our driver today is Murad.
Okay.
Bolalaringiz, Bormi.
Yeah,
Da.
Yes.
Oh, too. We are closing in on the area where the Aral Sea used to be. It used to be in this area. And this is where these stranded ships are that we've really been looking for today. The road here has been a mix of smooth roads like we're on right now and pothole-filled roads where the maximum speed is about 20 kilometres an hour. One of the worst roads that I've been on that's still got a surface on it. You know, of course a dirt road could be a lot worse than that, but this still has a surface on it, and it's just incredibly potholed, but it hasn't totally disappeared yet, so you can get no speed up at all. Up until the 1960s, behind me, this was all water as far as the eye can see. A vast inland sea called the Aral Sea. And below you can see a series of abandoned boats and ships, remnants of an old fleet of transporting cargo, wheat, agricultural products to other places across the other side of the sea, many hundreds of kilometres, where they could be hooked into the old Soviet railway network. On this lake, they used to fish, and they could pull approximately 40,000 tonnes of fish every year from this lake. The fish were processed in the town of Muynak, where there was a cannery, and that fish product was sent all around the Soviet Union. It was quite famous. But what happened in the 1960s is that the Soviet government decided to divert two rivers which feed this lake, and they diverted the rivers for agricultural purposes, for cotton and other agricultural products. And what happened was an almost immediate reduction in sea levels. The sea around this area immediately receded 10 kilometres in that direction. 10 kilometres immediately. So what they did to combat that was build roads out to the new shoreline and new ports so the ships could still come to shore. But it was too late. The damage was irreversible, and from that point forward the sea levels continued to get lower and lower and lower, and the shoreline receded to the position it is in today, where it's 200 kilometres from the original position. And that's why we have all of these stranded boats and ships. In fact, the reduction in sea level was so great that the sea is now split into two distinct sections, the north and the south. All that remains now of the old Soviet fleet is these relics here. Many of them were chopped up for steel. Some of them were left here on the spot, like these ones. And more still were chopped up and moved to other locations. It appears that most of the boats here are quite small. When the fishing fleet and the logistics fleet was first abandoned here, apparently there were some very large ships abandoned. These were ships hauling mainly agricultural products like grain. But still, impressive nonetheless, and just one of those really weird quirks in the world. We can have a sea level, well, the seashore recede by 200 kilometres. Interestingly, the town of Muynak, which this it borders on, used to also be a bit of a seaside town for the local Uzbek population. Well, that soon sort of became less fashionable when the sea receded many hundreds of kilometres. The town exists today and is still quite a modern town. It's a small town with a market and so forth, but it has a nice road. It has medical centres and schools, a small population, but it's not as well, even though it's extremely remote and there's nothing here now, but there is still some industry here. And I guess that's what keeps the town alive, because apart from that little industry they might have now, there really isn't a lot here in terms of agriculture. I mean, you can't grow anything on that. That's the seabed. You can't grow anything on it. It's just pure sand. And I guess now it's just pure desert. But to be fair, the land around here, when you look back at the land which is above sea level, or the old sea level, it's also desert as well. It's not as sandy as that, but it is quite dry and rocky. You can't really grow too much. I did see a couple of corn plants around the place, but there wasn't like big green fields of crops or anything like that. Here we have a much bigger boat. This one is quite big. I mean, you can call that a proper ship, can't you? That's quite large. The whole area is actually free to come into. They don't try and earn any money from it. Interestingly, as the shoreline receded here on the edge of the Aral Sea, fishing continued for quite a few years until one year the salinity in the lake became so great that the fish stocks just collapsed. Overnight, the fishing industry disappeared. All these people lost their jobs, the cannery had to shut down, and they had to adapt to a new way of life here in Muynak. Oh, look at that, you can get inside the inside of this ship. Interestingly, the weather here is in Indonesian we'd say panas dingin. It's hot, but cold at the same time. The sun is just brutal, brutal, brutal. You can feel it burning your skin, yet there is a breeze in the air that keeps things quite cool, quite cool. Not so much that you need long pants or a long sleeve shirt on, but it's not warm in any way, shape or form in terms of the wind. But that direct sunlight, well, brutal. Just a word on the weather situation. Apparently in the height of summer, it can reach 50 degrees out here in the desert, which is unsurprising really. The air is super dry, super dry. Your lips go dry, your mouth goes dry, your skin goes dry, everything's dry. Just stopped at a little shop to get a little drink here. This is what the local mini market looks like. $24,000 for 2 drinks. About $3 Australian. Assalamualaikum. One of the things they have here, these methane stations. Basically, a lot of the vehicles here are using compressed natural gas for their fuel rather than petrol. And it's sort of like the gas that you use in your home to heat your house. Yeah, but what they do with it, in order to get enough of it in a vehicle, because it's very, very diffused and gaseous, what they need to do is they need to compress it. And they need to compress it a lot. And so they have to compress it up to 250 bar, 250 times the atmosphere in a steel canister, which usually sits at the back of the car. And all these cars are being filled up at the moment. Now, why do they do that here? Well, Uzbekistan has massive, massive reserves of natural gas, and they can just pump it out of the ground, deliver it to these stations, and then pump it into people's cars. The range of the vehicles is not great. You probably get about, I'd guess a couple of hundred, maybe 250 kilometres, because this guy's already filled up 3 times on this trip, and we've been travelling a long way today. But it's dirt cheap, dirt cheap. It's less than half the price of petrol, and petrol is already very, very cheap here in Uzbekistan. So it becomes very, very economical, and a lot of the vehicles, in fact all of the taxis, are powered by this compressed natural gas or methane. My new friend, hello. Susan's found a little dog to be a friend with. Yeah. Hello. Oh, you're very cute. Hello. 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 Oh, yeah. Wow, what a cute dog. I'm not sure with these, see how they're refueling it through the front there? I'm not sure why they refuel it through the front and not through the back tank, but it's obviously, they've got a pretty good system anyway. So to fill the car, it costs about 20 Australian dollars or about 13 US dollars to fill the car full. That's pretty cheap, isn't it? This is the ancient city of Mizdahkan. It's a city that was built over 2,000 years ago in about 400 BC. And over the years, it's undergone a lot of changes. A lot of things have happened here. There's a lot of history here. And we're gonna have a bit of a walk around and figure out exactly what happened. As with most places here in Western Uzbekistan, there is a connection to the Silk Road. The city that was built here was one of the trading posts along the Silk Road. But over time, over the centuries, things got changed. And we now have places that are like this, a little mausoleum, a cemetery to house all the dead. And it actually stopped functioning as a city over that time and changed to different things as time went by. It changed as a result of things like raids from the Mongols and raids. Well, some of these mausoleums were here before the time of Alexander the Great, for example. Now, you can get inside this and go down here. Let's have a look. Isn't that spectacular? This is the dome we could see from up above. There's been the rise and the fall of this place, as I said, and the first real destruction of this place happened in the 1300s when Genghis Khan and his rabble sort of stormed through here, and I mean, it would have been a spectacular sight. Horseback, those big machetes, archers, and they absolutely razed the town to the ground. From what I understand, the famous guy gets buried over here, and then the less famous people get buried in this one. That's just the way it is. When you're famous, you get all the good stuff, including a good burial. Intermingled between all of these mausoleums are more recent burials. So it's actually a sort of a modern burial ground as well. But then you get these, like this big mud brick structure up here, which is something significant. So we'll go and have a look at that. But oh look, these graves are sort of collapsed as well. Like, that's a modern grave, and then you can see inside of that. I mean, if you get your torch out, you'll probably see a body in there or something, I'd imagine, because the graves are all sort of sinking in this sort of, well, the soil's an odd soil. It's almost like mud that's dried, but because it doesn't rain here very often, when you got buried, you probably got buried in this really loose dirt, and then after that rains really heavily, it just sort of sinks. So that's not very nice, is it? That's probably why back in the day they built one of those things. So you didn't have this sort of situation happening where your grave is collapsed. You can see how that's all been packed in with all the pieces of straw and mud just slapped in there. It's a pretty amazing construction. Just as I say, it's a pretty amazing structure. I come around the corner and it's all collapsed. But I mean, that's okay, isn't it? After 1,000 years of mud brick building, it should, you'd imagine it might collapse. But that's pretty cool, isn't it? That construction up there is just fantastic. Fantastic. Love it. Love this site. It's amazing. The good thing about it is that it's not just pretty buildings. The history behind it with Genghis Khan coming through here is quite phenomenal. Now, when we look over in that direction, we get a fantastic view, well, first of all, of another ancient structure over there in the distance on the horizon, but even on this hill you can see the mausoleums just stretching on for hundreds and hundreds of meters across the mountain. My eye was drawn to these two structures with the turquoise domes on top. So I'm trying to find my way through the graveyard to those things because they look phenomenal. I don't know if they have any significance or not, but I'll find out. Maybe they were just rich people. Well, that's a pretty cool place to be buried if you're ever going to get a fancy burial. That's the sort of one you'd want. Yeah, this guy, well, this is quite new. This is only in 2023 that someone was buried in there, which is quite lucky for that guy. Well, it's not lucky because he died, but lucky that he got a nice burial. And then this place, I'm assuming, is a more modern one as well. And that is fantastic. Those stairs look like they flip up and there's something underneath. Wow, beautiful. And don't you get a great view? I wonder how much you have to pay to get one of those views. That is fantastic. Beautiful view over the hill below with mausoleums as far as you can see. The people with more money, the more wealthy people get the ones with the domes. If you don't have so much money, you get one of these graves below. What a lovely, lovely spot that has now changed from a bustling city along the Silk Road and changed into a mausoleum, a graveyard, if you like. I mean, I think mausoleum is more of a term we use for a building that we put a body in, isn't it? Rather than this sprawling complex of tombs. The Mizdahkan necropolis is another one of those places you've never heard of, and I'd never heard of until today. But when you get here, you think, hey, that's pretty cool. There's a bit of history there. And today we learned something new. The remote western deserts of Central Asia, including Uzbekistan, are just phenomenal. They have a real character to them that is really unexpected for me. And some of these necropolises, the fortresses, the history behind the Aral Sea being absolutely demolished and then leaving a ghost town of ships just lying on the sand there is absolutely phenomenal. And I've had a great day exploring this part of Central Asia. Thanks for coming along for the ride with me today, and thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up to date with all things Indonesia and Central Asia as I continue this journey along the Silk Road. I'll catch you next time. Sampai jumpa.